Hello, everybody. So glad you could join us today. Today, we're going to be speaking about food. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about. I love food, and I hope that you're going to enjoy this too. Sorry for the slight technical hitches, but I'm glad we are here and we are live. My first question to you as you're joining in would be, where are you from? Yep, where are you from? Where are you listening to me from? And yeah, let's keep the chat live and see what's going on. Right? Cool. So I'm going to, since we're already late, I do not think we have time to wait for other people to stream in. So without much waiting, I'm going to go into an introduction of myself, if any of you don't know me yet. Yep, so that's me. And this is a picture that was taken about a year or two ago. And what's happening here is basically, I think it's the best picture of me, because I don't take too many pictures. But yeah, so a bit about myself is I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes when I was 24 years old. And yeah, it was a difficult thing for me to get my head around, right? But I managed to pull through. I did tremendous research. In my career, I'm a data scientist, so I love data and I love research. So I dug deep into the research, and I found that basically the magic of, I wouldn't even call it magic, the truth of a whole food plant-based diet has basically been known since the 1920s, right? So if you think about this, I was diagnosed in 2018. People have known this information for close to 100 years, right? And for me, my main problem was kind of how do I apply it, right? And that's what we're going to look at in this webinar. I did a lot of diets. I did ketogenic diet. I did vegetarian diet. There's a diet called a fasting diet, believe it or not. But yes, I did that too. And out of all that, what worked for me is a whole food plant-based lifestyle. And one of the reasons that I think it worked for me the best is because, number one, it has the most research. Number two, it's been there for the very long, like the longest time. And because of that, it's been shown that it does not damage your health in any way in the long term as compared to other diets. And yeah, so let's get to it. Enough about myself. And yeah, so basically, what's a whole food plant-based lifestyle? In a nutshell, it's basically eating whole foods which come from plants. So what that means is basically, when you talk about whole foods, is unrefined or minimally refined ingredients that go into your food. So let me give you an example here. So for example, if you were to choose between bleached flour, the white flour, right, and whole wheat flour, or the wheat berries, the whole food plant-based way would be going for the wheat berries, right? The next best thing is the whole wheat flour, right? And the worst of all is going to be the bleached flour, right? And when you talk about plant-based, it's as simple as no animals, nothing that comes from an animal. If it has a baby, if it has a child, if it's meant for a baby, and all that. So basically everything plants, right? So you're going to see how you're going to incorporate this into your lifestyle. And it's pretty simple. Cool. So a visual depiction of whole foods. You have your fruits, which I love. You have your vegetables, which I also love. You have your whole grains, which I love as well. You have your tubers, legumes, herbs, and spices. So all those things, I love them all. And this is primarily what's the base, kind of the foundation of whole foods. And this is actually a lot. I could even challenge you right now to maybe take a picture of this and try to eat each of these fruits, each of these foods in a week, right? Yeah, so there's a lot of variety that you're going to kind of expose yourself to, right? So the biggest question I get is, what's the difference between a vegan, a vegetarian, and a whole food plant-based lifestyle? And the difference is actually quite clear in terms of if you look at the principles, right? So people who are following no diet, they could literally eat anything and get away with it, right? Because they're not following any diet. So for them, it's completely okay, right? But how about a vegan diet? So a vegan diet was founded with principles of animal cruelty. So basically anything that comes from an animal or is part of an animal, or an animal is exploited to make it, is where the vegans kind of draw the line, right? And plant-based is kind of like a spin-off of the vegan diet, but it doesn't cut out completely the meats and the animal products. Basically what it cuts out is, it doesn't even really cut out anything. It just tells you to limit them, and basically advocates for about 90% or more of what's on your plate to come in your food, to go in your mouth, right? So what about the whole food plant-based lifestyle? So I've seen places where this is kind of different, and in my perspective, I think the best thing when it comes to a whole food plant-based lifestyle is you're really focusing on healthy foods, minimally processed foods, no animal products, and compensating all of that with fruits, vegetables, legumes, tubers, and so on and so forth. So you will never lack food to eat. In fact, I could eat different types of foods every day for the next 30 days without ever repeating the same food, right? And I'm sure if you're already in adopting a whole food plant-based lifestyle, that's something that you can do for yourself, and maybe it should be a challenge for you. Cool. So I've talked about our method, so now let me kind of drill into the Live Healed method. So basically, if you let me talk about this for a few seconds here, I started a coaching program to help people learn more about what they're putting into their bodies and learn more in terms of health, right? So I've had people asking me great questions. How do you reverse hypertension? How do you reverse type 2 diabetes? How do you get better in terms of your energy levels? How do you get better bowel movements? And so on and so forth. So little snippets or blog posts are not the best way for me to convey this information to you, and that's why we started a coaching program where we could show you step by step into how you can transition completely to a whole food plant-based lifestyle. It's a lifestyle that has been shown to have the best longevity in terms of how old you will get, the best cancer protector if you want to evade any of these chronic diseases. Is the one that has been shown, and there's study after study after study. And when you talk about our method, what we've kind of modified a bit is on the fats. So, and this comes from the research. So doctors such as John McDougall have written books about this, advocating for an 80-10-10 diet. So basically 80% comes from carbs, 10% protein, and 10% fats. And on average, if you look at the normal person and what they eat, most people consume about 40% of their daily food from fat, and this comes from different sources. So for example, you eat a donut that has some fat, you eat a cake that has some fat, you eat food cooked with fat that has some fat, and so on and so forth. So by the end of the day, you've given your body all this fat, and that kind of starts to slow down a bit of the processes in your body, right? So we're not cutting out all fat, but we're limiting it, right? And that has been shown to be better for you in terms of improving insulin sensitivity, reversing hypertension, and a lot of these chronic diseases. So what we focus on is basically green light foods. So green light foods are basically all vegetables, all starchy and non-starchy vegetables, yes, all potatoes, basically all whole foods, right? And on the yellow light, we talk about minimally processed food. So basically on the yellow light, something like brown bread would be on the yellow light. So what we advocate is for you consuming about 10% of that. And when it comes to the nuts and seeds, those have a higher fat content, as you'd expect. For example, groundnuts have about 60%, if I'm not wrong, macadamia nuts, and so on and so forth. So those we talk about limiting, right? And it's actually very easy for you to get carried away when you're eating nuts. Imagine how many grams of nuts you could eat in a day. You can't even count, right? So we talk about limiting it, and even foods such as avocado, yes. So because it's about 70% fat. There's this debate about good fat and bad fat, but all in all, you want to limit it. You want to get those good fats. Granted that you'd rather eat an avocado than use olive oil or any other cooking oil, but you still want to limit the avocado as well. And red light foods is basically, we advocate for not consuming this, actually avoiding any animal products. And this comes from the research. And in this webinar, what I like about this is that we are going to look at that, okay? We're going to look at the research, and I hope it's going to excite you to make the switch. Cool. I kind of found myself not knowing where to go except to the frequently asked questions. And this is something that I know if you try and tell someone that, hey, I'm trying to have a better lifestyle, hey, I'm trying to change my diet to this and that, you're going to be asked some questions. So let's look at those. And maybe for you, you had a question like this in mind, right? Cool. The biggest question I get is, how do I know if a whole food plant-based diet is for me, right? And you really don't know until you try it. There's no harm in trying it. You will not suffer in any way if you try and make the switch and really see for yourself the changes. And how a whole food plant-based lifestyle affects you is going to be completely different from how it affects me, depending on basically my health when I started at this and so many other factors, right? But what we've seen even from the coaching program is that so many people report feeling so much better in terms of the energy levels, in terms of even the brain health, in terms of your mood. Imagine, food has a direct correlation with your mood, and the reason for this is that 90% of serotonin, which some people refer to as the healthy, sorry, the happy hormone is produced in your gut. So basically, imagine if you're feeding your gut foods that are not exciting for your gut, it's going to definitely impact your mood, right? Cool. The next thing is money. And believe it or not, it's so much cheaper just switching to a whole food plant-based diet. I have saved tons of money, and what I like doing is, with the savings that I've gotten from those foods, I basically try out a new food. So granted, some things are going to be expensive, especially if it's not grown in your country. So for example, here I have not seen anyone grow persimmons, right? It's a certain kind of fruit, and I could only get them from a supermarket, whereby you could get a piece for about 300 bob. 300 bob, in translating that to something else, it's about 2 kgs of beans. So you kind of want to see where your money will go. And for the biggest bang for your buck is, if you want the biggest bang for your buck, go for things that are grown locally. The closer you are to where it comes from, the cheaper it's going to be. For example, potatoes are about 40 bob per kg, depending on where you're buying them, and beans, depending on where you're buying them, and so on and so forth. So what you want is basically buy food in bulk, right? So for example, I'd give you an example. I normally buy about 10 kgs of sweet potatoes and 10 kgs of potatoes in a month, and I go through that, and about 5-6 kgs of beans, depending of dried beans, and so on. So that food lasts me for an entire month, and it's actually so much cheaper. And with like the previous slide talked about, you never know until you try it, right? You never know until you try it. Cool. So next thing is, how do you do it when you're traveling or away from home? So for this, you need to take a bit more effort, right? A bit more effort. So, and what I tell people about this is calling ahead at a restaurant and talking about which kind of foods the restaurant has in stock, and so on and so forth. What can they make for you, and so on and so forth. Because most restaurants have chefs who are willing to keep you in health, right? So don't be afraid of choosing to be healthy. You're paying, whatever you're going, you're paying. So you'd rather pay for something you're going to enjoy, and something your body is also going to enjoy. And most of the time, if you can't call ahead, you're always going to find fruits. You're always going to find potatoes. You're always going to find something plant-based. And don't beat up yourself when it has fat or something. It's, as long as you're sticking to the plant-based, and even when you go back home, you can really, when you're really watching what you're putting into your mouth, it's going to be so much better, right? So get a bit creative. I've been at buffets where I went for the salad, then added some whole wheat bread and made a sandwich just like that, right? And so on and so just get creative. Just get creative. Don't panic if you're traveling or away from home. And another question is, you might not get what, and it actually comes as a statement, right? So when people talk about, you might not get everything that you need for your body when it comes to eating only plants. So, and this has also been backed up by tons of research, where you'll get literally everything from plants, with the exception of vitamin B12. And vitamin B12 doesn't really come from animals, if you think about it. Vitamin B12 is created by bacteria in the soil. So how the animals get it is by, especially the grazing animals like cows, when they eat when they eat the grass, they eat some of the soil, and vitamin B12 gets into their bodies. And when you eat the meat of that animal, that's how you get B12. But don't feel so safe if you're consuming animal products, because studies that have been done in US have shown that, and how animals are grazed today, they don't get a lot of B12, whereby they're just somewhere, probably just seated, or not seated, probably just standing and being fed to be fat, to be slaughtered, right? So you might not get a lot of B12 for that. And I did the math on how much my supplement for vitamin B12 would cost me in a day, and let me see, it was actually so little. I was even surprised. Give me a sec, so that would be about 6 shillings a day. If I save 6 shillings every day, that's about 2,500. That's all the vitamin B12 I need in a year, right? And also, for people who panic about, oh, I'm going plant-based, I need my vitamin B12 right now, that's not the case. What happens is that, and studies have shown this, is whereby you'll get vitamin B12 deficient if you stop taking vitamin B12 for 2 years, right? So if you go plant-based today and a month later you're told you're vitamin B12 deficient, what that basically means is that you are vitamin B12 deficient before you started the whole food plant-based lifestyle. All right. Oh. Yes, and I get this from a lot of people who like exercising, a lot of people who like doing weights and so on and so forth. And granted, athletes need more protein, and actually they actually need more nutrients than the average person. And studies have shown that consuming an excess amount of protein does nothing for your body. Your body can only use a certain amount, and that certain amount is about 0.8. It's basically multiplying your body weight times 0.8, and that's the amount of protein you need in a day. So it's very little. It's very, very little. So for example, if I am 60 kgs and I multiply that by 0.8, that's 48 grams of protein. I could literally get that in one sitting of beans and rice, literally, right? And I've also had someone tell me that there's a certain type of protein that is not in plants, that is in animals. And I went into the research, and apparently that's not the case. So plants have everything you need in terms of protein, right? So feel free to look at vegan bodybuilders. If you're not into bodybuilding, maybe you're into ultra marathons or something like that. There are very many ultra athletes who are also plant-based, and more are coming by the day. So here is where the story lies. So why would you want to try a whole food plant-based lifestyle? And here we're going to look at the research. So there's this study done by Erin Campbell, Thomas Campbell, and Mohammed. And basically what this study is going to show us is what 8 weeks of a whole food plant-based lifestyle does. And so we have, as we're looking at a study, every time you look at a study, you have to look at the participants, right? So the participants, there were no really anyone with kind of diagnosis required or excluded from participation. You could come if you are or if you are not suffering from anything or something, right? And in this study, they measured the weight, the height, and the blood pressure at that visit, and also in the middle of the study, they looked at those same metrics again. And let's see. So basically, the intervention group is basically the one that was changed, right? If you think about it. So the basically consists of how the study was conducted. These participants would go to a set location, and they had classes, right? They had classes about twice a week in terms of talking about food, what foods to eat, and so on and so forth. And also, one thing to add is that they were given food on the days of those classes. Other than that, they just were advised to eat a whole food plant-based lifestyle, rather a whole food plant-based diet. And when you talk about the quantities, they were told to eat as much as they want without restriction. So they were, and also one thing I liked about this study is that nothing in regards to exercise was advocated. You could literally eat and sit, and you're still within the parameters of the study. Cool. So they're told to eat lots of fruits, non-starchy vegetables, starchy vegetables as well, and they were told to limit high-fat plant foods. Think about the groundnuts, the macadamia nuts that we've talked about, and also they were advised to have some flax seeds, some ground flax seeds, and some chia seeds as an omega-3 source, right? So that's where if you're looking at plant-based sources of omega-3, those are some of the highest: flax seeds, chia seeds, and also hemp seeds, among many. Cool. So which foods were allowed, right? And an easier way to look at this is this, right? So we've already talked about the foods that were allowed. Now let's talk about the excluded foods. So the excluded foods: the meat, poultry, fish, seafood, any animal products, highly refined flours, obviously the oils or solid fats, things like ghee, things like butters, and so on. Any vegan meat or cheese replacements that contained added oils, right? One thing you're going to realize with this vegan meats is that they tend to be very high in fat. Also, things like fruit juices, they were excluded as well. And the things that were limited and what they were told to consume a little, if at all, are things like dried fruits, high-fat plant foods, things like avocados, refined soy, and also alcohol. Ideally, you're told to keep it, kind of calm it down. So what the study was aiming to do is trying to look at the effect of a whole food plant-based lifestyle. And these are the results. If you look at everything there, everything is coming down, which is good. The BMI is coming down. Weight went down for just 8 weeks. Just 8 weeks, these guys lost 5.5 kgs on average. 8 weeks. Imagine doing that for the rest of your life. If you do a whole food plant-based lifestyle for the rest of your life, you're guaranteed to reach your ideal body weight and kind of stop there, right? No more fluctuations in weight and so on and so forth. And if you look at the blood pressure, it was all coming down, which is good. And the cholesterol, it was all coming down. The triglycerides, it was all coming down. And all this is good in just 8 weeks. Can you imagine? So let's talk a bit about some of the special things in the results. So about a quarter of the people who went into this study decreased or discontinued at least one chronic medication. 8 weeks. Granted, these people have been on medications for more than 8 weeks. Because if you have a chronic medication, that's something that you have been consuming for a long time, right? In just 8 weeks, you have decreased or discontinued at least one chronic medication. Think about that. Think about all the people who have high blood pressure and have to take pills in the morning and in the evening. Think about the diabetics. and so on and so forth, right? So it's an interesting thing. In just 8 weeks, think about that. Also, one thing to note that vegans and vegetarians were not rejected from participating, right? So about 30% of the participants were vegan or vegetarian already, right? So this, and for this, I'd like you to highlight this in your mind, whereby we already looked at the differences between vegan, whole food, plant-based, and vegetarian. So it seems that from this study, it seems that vegans and vegetarians are better off going to a whole food, plant-based lifestyle, right? Because they experienced weight loss and cholesterol reductions. So that's something good. And think about back to the differences where vegans and vegetarians all consume a higher fat content in their diet, right? So that's interesting. So how do you make the switch? And I'd like you to snap your fingers wherever you're. Just how do you make the switch? And I'm going to give you 5 keys to succeed on the transition, right? 5 things. And number 1 is basically making starches and legumes the base of your plate. What that means is basically when you feel hungry, when you want to go eat, go for the starches and the legumes first. So that means something like rice and beans. That means something like potatoes and beans, potatoes and lentils, and so on and so forth. Right? And the second tip that I have for you is eat the foods you enjoy, right? And don't worry about individual nutrients. So when you're eating, even currently right now, you do not think about what you're eating, right? So in terms of the minerals, the vitamins, and so on. So don't think about that also when you're moving to a whole food, plant-based lifestyle. The third thing is focus on the big changes, right? If you love avocados and that's what's going to get you to eat more plants, have those at first and then wean yourself off the avocados, basically, right? And I use avocado because I have a very close friend of mine who loves avocados. Cool. And number 4 is the most important one. I could tell you this. Find like-minded people. Find people who are excited about eating plants. Find people who are always trying new things when it comes to plants. And because of this, we could not overlook the importance of our community. And it's on Facebook as Live Heal Community, right? So find it, join us, and we'll be happy to welcome you in the community. And the 5th one is a very strong one for people. We all love sharing our minds. We all love telling people how good this diet is. We like telling people how you've moved, how you've switched, and so on and so forth. But I want you to relax, right? Do not, and the main reason for this is you do not want to get knocked off your flow, right? There's always someone who's going to come up with a new study that tells you, hey, eating eggs reduces cholesterol. And I've actually had this so many times. And because you're kind of starting out, you're going to be easily swayed, right? So just relax, hold your tongue, and enjoy your fruits. Enjoy your fruits. Cool. So and I promised a meal plan, and that's something that I'm going to deliver on, right? And if you registered for the webinar, you're going to get it to your email. If you did not, unfortunately, you're going to have to pause and take a screenshot, or you could send us an email. You could send us an email, and I'll be happy to respond. Cool. So this is a sample meal plan that looks at kind of transitioning you to eating more plants, and that's something I hope by now, looking at the research, looking at how it has transformed people's lives in 8 weeks, just 8 weeks. I hope that's something that you're excited about. And this is a sample meal plan. And this is kind of to get you started. So for breakfast, you're going to be eating a lot of oats, fruits, obviously the chia seeds. Sometimes you're going to be just eating fruits. Sometimes you're going to, and just one day you're going to eat vegetables. And this is kind of to kind of shift the gear into, you do not have to be eating milk and bread in the morning, or cereal and milk in the morning, and so on and so forth. And for lunch, you're going to be eating a lot of potatoes, a lot of legumes, a lot of veggies, some rice, some plantains, some butternuts, some tortillas. And there's so much here. And if you take a look at this, it's actually something, seeing as today is Friday. If tomorrow you're going to do your weekly shopping, get some of the things here and try and stick to this week. And I'd like to know how it is for you. I'd like to know how it is for you. And with that, I'm going to invite you for questions. If you have any questions, please type on the chat and maybe let's discuss that. I'm just going to give a few minutes for this, seeing as we are kind of running late. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed the webinar, and I hope it has inspired something in you and informed you to take action. Okay. So seeing as there are no questions, you could still ask me questions on the Facebook community. Send me a DM or anything. I'm always reachable. I'm always happy to help you move to a healthier lifestyle. And with that being said, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you very much for your time. Cheers.